Play to win or time to tank. With the top pick still up for grabs, Mel Kiper and Field Yates tell us what to make of the NFL's worst teams in the upcoming draft. Plus, we respond to your questions, your takes, and your draft dreams live. First Draft starts right now. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to First Draft. We're with you every week through this college football season on Thursday afternoons, live on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. You know who they are. They are Field Yates and Mel Kiper. Let's dive right into it with the reminder that Mel's Big Board is available on ESPN.com all season long and updated every Friday. Now, we will do all the things that we normally do here. We'll be doing some college player breakdowns, some names you know, some that maybe you don't. We have a ton of really good questions that we got from social media this week, and we'll be getting to those. But we're going to do something a little different to begin. So, guys, let's talk about some of the NFL teams, because the league really this year is shaping up, Mel and Field, to be very much a question of haves and have-nots. We can see some teams who look like they're going to be at the bottom of these standings and thus the top of the draft. There are 7 teams who are 2-7, 2 teams who are 2-6. So if the draft began today, the New England Patriots would have the first pick, the Jaguars would have the second, the New Orleans Saints would have the third. We've talked so much about Carolina, they would actually have the 4th pick in the draft. The Browns would have the 5th, and on it goes from there. So, Field, I want to start by getting just a sense from you, from these teams in the mix, which one would you think, are as they shape up right now, would you be sensing is going to wind up with the coveted first pick in the 2025 draft?
Yeah, Greeny, that one is like splitting hairs right there, because the team that I have the least amount of confidence in of the 7 is the Cleveland Browns with the backup quarterback in Jameis Winston. But that isn't to suggest that I have implicit confidence in a bunch of the other teams on this list as well, right? So Cleveland might be the narrowest of favorites for me. But I want to dive into what I've been hearing around the NFL, Greeny, which I think is so incredibly fascinating. Is I would say of the 7 teams that are 2-7, and you can include the Titans and the Dolphins in this category as well, because they only have 2 wins themselves, that there are only 3 teams. I'm sorry, there are only 2 teams, I should say. No, the answer is 3. 3 that people around the NFL have said to me, it would be stunning to me if one of those teams took a quarterback with their first round pick. Those 3 teams would be, probably in this order, the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Jaguars. The Patriots because of Drake May and his promise, the Dolphins and the Jaguars because of the contracts handed out to Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence, guys who were at one point the 5th and the 1st overall picks in the NFL draft. Everybody else, a quarterback is in play. And we're going to dive into draft rankings and which quarterbacks have moved up enough and which players that are non-quarterbacks merit top 5 overall pick considerations. But Greeny, I know that you'll like this, and I know that Mel will like this. The most interesting name that has been brought up to me as the top half of the draft order starts to shape up is Sam Darnold. Why? The answer is because Sam Darnold right now is the best free agent quarterback in the 2025 class. Sam Darnold is under contract just this year with Minnesota. Minnesota used its first round pick. They traded up to number 10 overall to grab J.J. McCarthy. We know that quarterbacks are often rushed into the NFL sooner than they need to be, but it's also not great business to take a guy 10th overall and sit him for multiple seasons. The Vikings have been kind of planning for a discounted quarterback starting next year after spending a lot of money on Kirk Cousins and then bridging the gap this year with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's going to get paid by somebody. And if you look around the NFL, some of the most obvious teams that Sam Darnold could become appealing to are in the top 10 of picks right now. Maybe Carolina would not go down that road because he has been in Carolina. It did not work out for Sam Darnold in Carolina. How about the Titans, though, in Tennessee? How about the Giants, the other New York team? Somebody's going to play their chip, and somebody might well play their chip on Sam Darnold. And all of a sudden, one of the teams that's going to need a quarterback in the top 10 is no longer going to need a quarterback because Sam Darnold might get a Baker Mayfield-like contract of 3 years and $100 or $105 or $110 million based off of how he has played so far this season. I thought that name was so fascinating when hearing from people around the NFL that already have their eyes on what Sam Darnold could represent come March.
Yeah, Field and Greeny reestablishing a guy, the third pick in the draft, and now be where Sam Darnold is. And you saw Ryan Tannehill go to Tennessee from Miami, and he did exactly that. And others have done it as well. But what Sam Darnold's done, speaks to the organization. And we talked about what's around that quarterback. And in Minnesota, they have what it takes and what you need. And other quarterbacks don't have that. But in terms of J.J. McCarthy, if you do make that move, and J.J. McCarthy's your quarterback coming off a year, basically a medical redshirt year, do you know what you have with JJ? No, you don't. You don't know till he's out there. He was 20 years of age coming out of Michigan, had won a national title, 21 now. Bottom line is, you're rolling the dice that you evaluated him, you believe in him, and he can be your guy. And that division, Jared Goff's playing lights out football. You have Jordan Love, you have Caleb Williams. You can't be fourth in the division at quarterback. So is JJ going to keep you up in that top echelon, or what's he going to be? You're rolling the dice there. But I get what you're saying about Sam Field. And I think when you look at the Raiders, they're the intriguing team. And ironically, talk about how crazy the NFL is. I'm sitting here in Baltimore with my Ravens. We lost to the 5th team and the 6th team in the draft right now. We lost to Jameis and we lost to Minshew. I mean, come on. We lost to the Raiders here, and we lost to the Browns there when Jameis was almost intercepted a couple times, but wasn't. Look what happened last week. So
Jameis was Jameis Elway that week, Mel. He was Jameis Elway that week, is what he was.
Exactly. So he picked the week to beat my Ravens. But that's the crazy part of the NFL. Any Sunday, anything can happen. Ravens lose 2 games. The team's picking 5 and 6. But the Raiders got shocked last year. They were shocked by sitting there where they were and not getting one of the 6 quarterbacks, particularly Michael Penix Jr. You got to believe that the Raiders, in a division with Mahomes and Herbert and now Bo Nix and in an AFC loaded with great quarterbacks, can't be just sitting there at 6 and saying, well, Shedeur will be there. Yeah. Tom Brady likes Shedeur. We love Shedeur. We need Shedeur. Shedeur wants to be in Vegas. Deion wants to be in Vegas. We can just sit at 6. Field, do you think, hey, based on rating, I got him at 11, Shedeur. I got Cam Ward at 12. Yeah, babe, but we know that's not going to work because they're going to be overdrafted. What do the Raiders do? They're going to have to, and there's teams needing quarterbacks ahead of them. There's teams needing quarterbacks behind them that could jump up and get one. Shedeur, Cam Ward really have established themselves as 1 and 2 at quarterback. I don't think anybody right now, tell me if I'm wrong, tell me you disagree, Field, no other quarterback, in my opinion, because I think Garrett Nussmeier should go back to LSU after only starting. This is it's only a year. He's not even finished a year as a starter. He's had some rough moments with interceptions over the last 4 games. He goes back. Milroe goes back. Ewers and Beck, as Greeny pointed out, he's a draft analyst now. Greeny is. When Ewers, not up there. Yep. Guys this morning in New York were telling me, hey, Carson Beck, I see what everybody sees. So it's really Shedeur and Ward right now. Yes. Then you say, okay, what are the Raiders? I think the Raiders are the most intriguing team at 6 to see how aggressive they will be to go up and get a Shedeur Sanders and not sit at 6 and let somebody else get them.
I think that's going to go. Sorry, I'm sorry, Green.
Well, I've got 2 really good social media questions that parlay directly into the conversation that we are having. So let's use them. Again, we so appreciate every single week anybody you tweet at us using the hashtag First Draft, and then tune in to see if your questions get answered. Let me go back, Field, to what you were saying about Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
James Campanella tweets at us, JCampy2550, says, where would J. McCarthy rank if the Vikings wanted to trade him? So let's put this in that context. If J.J. McCarthy was in this draft class, Field, would he be the number 1 quarterback?
Yes. And I'll say this. I warmed up to J.J. as the process got closer and closer to the draft itself last year. And part of the reason why is, well, Mel and I talked recently about how there are elements of I think it was last week, to be clear. There are elements of the draft process that get away from the most important thing, which is the tape. And yet in J.J. McCarthy's case, there was such limited exposure on tape because Michigan just bludgeoned teams on the ground and played world-class defense that they weren't asking J.J. to throw a bunch of high-leverage passes to win games. They were not asking, hey, you put the team on your right shoulder and you're going to carry us to a national championship game. J.J. did rise because there were things that I got to learn from talking to people that are evaluating J.J. within the NFL, that they're speaking to some of the intangibles and some of the work ethic and the attitude that, I have a sense of it, but you have a better sense of it when you're talking to people that are actually speaking with J.J. directly, that made me feel more empowered and emboldened on J.J. by the end of the draft process. But I still think he would be quarterback one this year, even if he was like, I think the 17th player, the 14th player on my board by the time that we got to round one last year. I just think that there are a couple of things that he did at a higher level that we don't see right now from any of the quarterbacks. His combination of accuracy and also mobility last year, I think, is unmatched in this year's draft class. Very pure pocket passer, good arm strength, very accurate, very mobile quarterback as well. I don't know that any quarterback that we think is going to come out this year offers that complete of a package. And the Vikings ain't trading him, by the way. They're not trading him. That's not going to happen.
And Green, if you JJ's one I'd never figured out, and I kept waiting, and I think Phil was alluding to the fact I kept waiting for that game where JJ McCarthy takes over. And he's the difference, but they didn't need him to be the difference. But the thing was, it was pro style, and you know about tough situations. They put him in some rough spots because it was kind of old school football. First and second down, that third down becomes critical, where that fourth down becomes critical. He had several. Remember the playoff game with Alabama, that fourth down in his own territory. So he had to deliver an NFL-like critical moments on third down because that's the way they played the game. Now, you could say, well, he never had that one game. It was defined by JJ being the difference in that game. But at moments in those games, some of those critical games, he was the difference. So I give him a lot of credit for that. But for normally, when you say emphatically, I know what you're getting, I might be wrong, but at least I'm emphatic about my analysis of a quarterback. I was never emphatic about JJ because I didn't see that at Michigan. He had help, he had assistance, but when he had to, that's why I liked him. Did I love him? Can't say I did. Did I know enough about him because of the situation at Michigan that prevented him from having to be the guy that changes everything? He was never had to be that guy. So for JJ, they're going to need him to be special because in that division, those quarterbacks are. So he's got to be. So there's pressure on the Vikings. If you send Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold keeps building on this, again, the Jets sent them packing. How did that work out with Zach Wilson? I remember saying, if it wasn't for Zach, we'd have stuck with Sam. That was the feeling. If you go back to the Jets, and I remember hearing all this from the people in the league and everybody I talked to, if it wasn't for Zach, they're sticking with Sam. And Sam's the man if it's not for Zach, because Zach's going to be unbelievable. And we love Zach. Didn't work out too good. So we jettisoned Darnold. Darnold now, after bouncing around, not looking at anything special because of organization. Okay. Remember, what did David Cutcliffe tell the managers? Don't pick places, pick people. People are important. So now he's with the right people in Minnesota. Here we go. Will he be with the right people when he moves on? I don't know. JJ will be with the right people. So that will help him. So it's really going to be fascinating to see how that all works out in Minnesota.
But the thought, Mel, just very quickly on this, the thought that they would decide to hitch their wagon to Darnold and trade McCarthy, that would be crazy to you, Mel, based on the money? Because everything else being equal, Darnold was a better prospect than McCarthy was. It's not my job to say that. I read your grades, so I'm aware of what they were. The money will be a factor in this, but would that be just too crazy to even consider, Mel?
No, and I don't think it is. And I said this when Sam, I kept saying Sam's the man, but Zach Wilson's the guy. And I was sitting there, everybody looked at him like crazy. Well, you take the quarterback. He's going to be better than Sam Darnold. Is Zach Wilson better than Sam Darnold? So again, Sam
is McCarthy better though, Mel? That's what I'm asking you. Is McCarthy going to be better than Sam Darnold has been in this offense?
I can honestly say I don't know because I didn't see enough to JJ to have an emphatic analysis. The rate you rate him, I liked him. Did I say you go back to Sam. Sam's he's not 35 years old. Okay. Yeah. Sam's not this veteran who's, towards the end of his career. He came out the same year that Baker Mayfield did and Josh Allen did and Lamar Jackson did. Okay. And he was the third pick overall. And a lot of people thought he was the best quarterback in that draft. Ahead of Josh, ahead of Baker, ahead of Lamar, all of them, right? At that particular moment. As I said, the Jets liked him. They didn't love him enough because they had Zach Wilson, who they love. Minnesota has to really like Sam Darnold. Now, we have to see how this year plays out. Okay, let's see. Let's let it play out. Let's not rush to judgment on that. But for JJ, to answer your question, Granny, there was mixed opinion. I mean, there was some mixed opinion on JJ McCarthy. Remember the Giants? The Giants want JJ. Giants wanted Drake May. They ended up with Malik. They could have had JJ. Yeah. They took Malik Neighbor. So people weren't I wasn't emphatic. I mean, like I said, you can be right, you can be wrong, but you still have a strong opinion that could turn out to be completely erroneous and ridiculous. But you still, on draft, they feel like I'm going to get this right. I never felt strongly about JJ. I kept, like I said, I said that on draft day, Greeny. So I think with them, they know these two quarterbacks better than anybody. Now, they didn't have JJ long until he got hurt. They know Sam, and they know what he is, and they know that locker room. and they know how much he works. First one in, last one out, all the things you need to be. Sam Darnold is not an over-the-hill or aging veteran quarterback. He should be in the prime right now of his career. That's a decision. That's a tough decision. I think as the season plays out, we'll know more about what that decision may end up being.
All right, so we'll see where they wind up going. Let me go through a few other thoughts on the top of the draft order as we see it. I'm going to bring up something that I'm nervous to bring up. Mel gets mad. And when Mel gets mad, we all know it's very entertaining. But when you are the one who has provoked that anger in Mel, it can make one's heart skip a beat.
Yeah. Been there.
So, there are very few uglier words in sports than the word tank. When I was watching the Patriots and Titans go into overtime the other day, Mel, now doing this draft, the first draft podcast with you guys, the only thought I had watching that, Mel, was the real winner of this game is the team that loses. Where when someone says to you, when a fan base reaches out to you, and I know they do, and they say, Mel, I want my team to lose out for a pick.
Here we go.
What does Mel say?
Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's what I say. Yeah. Shut the hell up.
So good.
These players. Now, I get those calls, Field and Greeny. I do get those calls from fans, and we all get them. Hey, who are we going to get? Because I hope we lose every game. Hey, that's fans. They can do that. They have the right to do that. But to say anybody is to basically say these players, coaches are tanking for whoever, they're playing for their NFL livelihood here. These guys are playing for a job in the National Football League, and to try to stay healthy and keep improving and proving to that team that they're the guy, or if I'm not the guy here, I'm going to be the guy somewhere else. You can't quit on anything. You can't worry about tank. No player, no coach is thinking about that as they go in. Now, fans are, because they have the right to do that. And I understand that. Sometimes it's better. You're going to get that guy. If we could have got that guy, look how much different it would have been. But we ended up picking here because we won a couple meaningless games. I get all that. But sometimes it works out fine. Maybe you lose Troy Aikman, but you get it in Green Bay, a pretty doggone good quarterback not that much longer later on a couple of years, right? So you had to wait a little bit, but you get that guy. I look at this with, say, New England right now. They're right now picking number 1 in the draft, right?
Yep.
They got Drake May.
Yeah.
Now they're hoping Drake May's franchise. We'll see. Yeah. We don't know, but they're hoping he's franchise. Yeah. Who's sitting there that they could use more than anybody in this draft? Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter.
You think so?
I think Travis Hunter is my guy. Travis Hunter on offense. Travis Hunter with Gonzalez at corner. Travis Hunter in the AFC, where you got all these great quarterbacks. You got to cover these receivers when you got all these great quarterbacks. You can't have 1, 2, 3. Something you need 4 cover guys, right? I'm here in Baltimore where we thought we had this talent-laden secondary with all this depth, and we don't. It's not getting the job done. So again, Travis Hunter, because of his dual ability, where we're not even sure, is he a wide receiver? Could be great. Cornerback could be locked down. Could he be both early on? If I'm New England, Travis Hunter's my guy. You looked at me like I was a little off with that, Field. Who do you think they're number 1? Who do you think they're targeting?
I think the Patriots don't want to be number 1, because I think what they want to be, this is just, I think what I would want if I were the Patriots is to pick around 5 or 6. And here's the reason why. First of all, that means that Drake May is showing enough that you're winning some games. Right? A couple, not a lot, but a couple games. And by the way, through 4 starts, 3 1/4 starts, Drake May, about what you'd hope for, right? The guy looks like he's got a real chance to be an excellent player in this league. On top of that, the Patriots are desperate, screaming, crying for offensive line help right now. I love me some Kelvin Banks. You know how I feel about Kelvin. Kelvin Banks is excellent. Number 1 overall pick, offensive tackles have got to be like your guy, Jonathan Ogden or Orlando Pace or somebody of that caliber for it to really be worth that investment and not entertain trading down a few spots. So if I'm the Patriots, if I pick 5 or 6, to me, that's exactly the range of where a guy like Kelvin Banks deserves to go, because I don't want to be forced into taking a player too high, but I also run the risk if I trade down of moving too far down and then all of a sudden landing a player at a less important position for the growth and the foundation of Drake May going forward. This franchise, since Tom Brady left, has been far too bereft of the support required around a young quarterback to make meaningful progress forward. They need to do everything in their power to empower Drake May going forward. I don't
Travis
care
Hunter's number 1 on my board. Travis Hunter's number 1 on my board. Kelvin Banks is number 6. Where are those 2 on your board, Field?
Travis Hunter's number 1, and Kelvin Banks, I think, is number 5.
All right,
so we're right there.
So in real time, with the number 1 pick overall, as Greeny said, we're not saying where we wish we were picking, where we are picking right now. Is number 1. At number 1, you're stuck at number 1. You don't get any trade offers. Who are you taking? I'm taking Travis Hunter. Who are you taking, Field?
Man, Mel, that is, I'm probably taking Travis Hunter too, but I got to be honest with you. I'm working the minute that the regular season is over, I am calling every GM in the league and saying, what are you willing to trade for pick number 1? And that's going to sound like a detriment towards Travis Hunter, which it is not. It is more the reality that I believe the way in which a franchise with a young quarterback takes its biggest leap forward is by first stabilizing the offensive line around him, right? I'm not saying that having great receivers does not help. And this is going to sound a little bit unfair because they do have Amon-Ra St. Brown. But look at the other pass catchers right now in Detroit. Khalif Raymond's making huge plays. You've got Tim Patrick making big plays for them. Allen Robinson's now on that team in Detroit. It's like every time I turn, it's like somebody else is making a big play for Detroit. Not that those guys aren't working their butts off, but because they have a great offensive line, they can do some of this stuff. So I believe the offensive line is the most important thing you can surround a great quarterback or a young quarterback with that is specific to the roster. I'm not talking about like a coordinator or a head coach or things of that nature. So that would be a team that I think would be, or at least I would be comfortable if I were the Patriots picking 4 or 5 as opposed to picking number 1.
And that gets back to Greeny, and I'll just make very quickly. That gets back to there's no perfect way because I talked about Jake Long going 1 to Miami and they got Chad Henne, but they passed on Matt Ryan. Didn't work out well, even though Jake Long was a good player. Then you go to, okay, where are we at with the Detroit Lions? Well, Cincinnati, remember Cincinnati had a debate with Joe Burrow off the injury. Do you take Penei Sewell? Do you take Jamar Chase? They opted for Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell goes to the Detroit Lions. Great player, helping the Lions become this team that keeps Jared Goff out there doing amazing things as Jared Goff's doing, former number 1 pick overall, who was, remember when Jared Goff was moved on, people weren't excited about Jared Goff. People were talking to me like Jared Goff was just an average quarterback, but he had been to a Super Bowl. Of course, they didn't get it done in the Super Bowl and they didn't put up any points. And he goes to Detroit. And they got to remember, they were still saying, hey, Detroit's got to find a young quarterback in the draft. Jared Goff's not the guy. Well, Jared Goff doesn't throw incomplete passes now, even in bad weather.
Unbelievable.
I mean, the guy's amazing. So, and you just said, hey, he's got good receivers. But again, you're talking about what Jared Goff's doing because of that line, that offensive line in Detroit, that wall in front of him. Penei Sewell being a guy who the Bengals coming up, Burrow off an injury, still went with the receiver who was his former teammate, great player, Jamar Chase, over Sewell. So again, it speaks to there's no perfect way. I just think for a receiver corner like Travis Hunter, the Patriots in the AFC in a division with Josh and Tua, and you think about where we are right now with them, the Jets, we'll see what happens down the road. But I just think Travis Hunter for New England, it just screams the ideal pick to me. And I'm not as Kelvin Banks to me isn't in a league with the Orlando Paces and the Jonathan Ogdens and those kind of players. To me, right now, I don't have that elite grade on Kelvin Banks.
But here's the thought on that, guys. I've always said the best position you can be in the draft is to have a very, very high pick. In this case, let's say number 1 in a draft where there's a quarterback people want and not to need one. And the Patriots could find themselves, well, at least half of that they've got because Field, I totally agree with you. I think we've seen enough from Drake May to at least say they're not moving on from him in 1 year. They're going to give him a chance to develop. He looks good. The question is there someone there someone's going to be willing to trade up to take? Mel, at the end of the day, if you are the Raiders, the Saints, the Browns, the Jets, one of these teams that winds up with the 5th pick, which is what Field wants, are you trading something of value up to get Shedeur Sanders at number 1?
Right now, it'll be Cleveland picking 5, according to what I see here, right? They would be the 5th pick.
They have sort of a weird situation, too, because the Deshaun contract kind of hamstrings whatever they may do. So they're kind of tough to – but in general –
let's just target the Raiders. I think the Raiders are the one with Shedeur.
They're the one. They're the one.
Will they trade up their field?
I think they would.
Give up
I think the Raiders would. I think Davis would. I think if Tom Brady's obviously going to be in this discussion in terms of the evaluation and who we recommend and what we feel like we have to do, like I said, division, conference, Shedeur, I think will be their guy by the time, and it's still games to be played. So I don't want to put anything in pen yet. But I do think Shedeur would be the guy. And that benefits the Patriots Field for that reason. They have a team there that says, hey, we lost out on Penix Jr. We're not losing out on Shedeur Sanders. We can't. So they could be able to move up. We don't know where they're going to be picking. Maybe they're picking 3, 4. Who knows where the Raiders will be picking at the end of this season. But I do think they would be the team that I think could be in line, in the mix, to give up a decent amount to entice New England to move off one. And if New England moves off of one, they get your offensive lineman. Maybe they lose Travis Hunter. Maybe they still get Travis Hunter. So it depends how far down they have to move. But I do think off of one to wherever the Raiders are picking, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, I think the Raiders are the team that could move up.
Okay, so I'll say this is a couple of things. One, the Raiders are the team that has me most intrigued for sure. For this reason, they are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Thinking back to John Gruden got there and this team tried to start winning meaningful football games right away. They have been throwing resources after resource after resource into finding a quarterback, right? It was, obviously Derek Carr was there, and then next thing you know, he's not there. And then all of a sudden it's Jimmy Garoppolo, and then it's not Jimmy Garoppolo, right? They have been trying and trying and trying. This past year, they got shut out, as Mel noted, in the draft. This is also a team that has an owner that's desperate to be back to relevance. Tom Brady is now involved in the mix. But here's the second part of the equation that I think is important to note. And if I'm New England, or whoever has that number 1 pick, I do think you have to be realistic. This past year, if a team was going to move up from where the Giants were at number 6 to somewhere into the top 3, it was going to have to cost a bounty. It was going to have to be the Trey Lance trade. It was going to have to be the equivalent of basically 3 first-round picks, because whatever order you had them rated, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, certified studs. Not because they were in the 2024 class, no matter what class they were in. Those guys were stud quarterback prospects. This year, it's not regarded in the same light. So if you're the Patriots and the Raiders call you and the 5 is on the table, pick 5 from the Raiders. I don't think the deal needs to be 5 plus your 2026 first-round pick plus your 2027 first-round pick. If the Raiders came and said, hey, we'll give you a 5 plus whatever, 37, which would be this 5th pick in the second round, and a second in 2026, that may be something that would kind of keep me interested if I'm the Patriots, because I can get Kelvin Banks or Michael Williams at pick number 5, guys who would really help us meaningfully as well, and get another starter at 37 and another starter in the 2026 second round. So the cost may be a whole lot different this year, which may open up more trade-up possibilities than this year when, yes, teams love these quarterbacks, but to get an owner to sign off on basically trading 3 first-round picks when some of those deals have failed royally recently, including the Carolina trade-up plus the San Francisco trade-up, is a very tough ask.
So a shout out, by the way, to @DrakesPats, who had sent in the question on Twitter, are the Patriots drafting wide receiver or offensive tackle? Yeah. Because without reading the question, we have now addressed the answer. Yes. Mill is taking the wide receiver unless he's a corner. Yep. and Field
or both.
Field is or both. And Field is trying to trade back and take the offensive tackle. So we will see. There are a few more good Twitter ones in here. Patrick Lynch tweets, who in the 2025 draft class can save the Browns? And it brings to me an interesting question. If the Browns wind up drafting in quarterback position, well, wherever they wind up drafting, Mel, Deshaun Watson still has years and trillions of dollars left on his contract. Should they take a quarterback in the first round?
Got to think about it. Again, you're in a division there. You're talking about Lamar. You're talking about Burrow. You're talking about the Steelers now with Wilson Fields. And now you're sitting there, with a major problem on your hands. So again, I understand the money situation, the cap, all of that, but they have other needs, line, receiver. So there's other areas they could address. And then you get into how highly rated all those quarterbacks. I'm a Field. I have Shedeur at 11 and Cam Ward at 12. So I'm not thinking if I'm Cleveland, I have to do that now. We'll have to see what other quarterbacks are in this draft. Does Milroe come out? Does Nussmeier come out? We have to wait and see on that one to see how deep this quarterback group is, because that's what, if they go back, it's a drop off. And like I said, some of these guys haven't materialized like we had hoped. So good luck finding that quarterback. It's not, it's going to be tough. Catch lightning in a bottle there. So they have the other need areas, which would be the receiver, the offensive line to help out the quarterback. That they have in place, that they don't obviously go get one. And in this draft, picking at that spot, I think you are overdrafting. I think you're overdrafting inside the top 10, but that's going to happen with those 2 quarterbacks.
And Field, there's one on the Saints as well. I'll ask you the same question at Marshawn Better, and then we'll move on to other matters. but he tweets, who should the Saints select if they have a top 3 pick? And they're another team that finds themselves sort of betwixt and between from a quarterback standpoint. Would you take a quarterback if you're the Saints?
No, I don't feel strongly enough about one of these guys to take them potentially in the first 3 picks. Here's what I would do if I'm the Saints. I would do 2 things. I would take the best player available, and I would say, let's look in the mirror now. Let's commit, because they can keep trying these half measures to stay afloat, maybe sneak into the back end of the playoffs. What does that accomplish? Why aim for the middle in the NFL? I understand that losing sucks, but like, I'd rather be bad with useful assets going forward than a team that is stuck in the middle and can't get over the hump. So if I'm New Orleans, I am saying, I don't care if it's a player that we feel like is somewhat duplicative of a guy that we already have on our roster. If they have Michael Williams as the highest rated player on the board, I don't care. I don't care. They already have Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan. Fine. Allow those guys to mentor Michael Williams. They need everything right now. They need good young players, and they got to get their books cleaned up going forward. So if I'm the Saints, I'm taking the best player available, because there is no spot on my roster other than left tackle, where they drafted a great young player in Tali Fuaga last year, where I'm saying to myself, he's young enough, good enough, and under contract long enough that he is unequivocally a part of the future. They're a mess right now.
Let's roll forward then. Let's roll forward to what we do better than any other podcast in America can, and that is continuing to identify players that fans should be watching for on college weekends and preparing to hear their names called in April. Last week, we did day 1 names that you absolutely need to know. This week, we're going to move it back just a little bit. These are players that you guys think may hear their names called in the second half of night 1. Maybe these are players who have to wait until early on Friday night to hear their names. I know you've both selected a few players to think of. And Mel, we start with you and the wide receiver from Memphis.
I'm moving to Saturday and day 3 because I love
you are.
Day
Let's
3.
go.
I'm day 3. That's where the drafts are made. That's where you got to find those gems. And there's a lot of those 4th, 5th, 6th rounders that will play better than the 2nd rounder. So I go to Memphis. Memphis is a program with Dylan Parham, Blake Watson undrafted this year, Antonio Gibson, Kenny Gainwell, Bryce Huff, Tony Pollard, Calvin Austin, Jake Elliott. A lot of guys in the NFL from Memphis. I'm big on the Mid-American Conference. I'm big on Toledo, Darius Robinson. I talked about last week, Newton, the wide receiver there. Yep. DeMeer Blankumsee was at Toledo. He was doing great. He goes to Memphis. And I was talking about him a couple weeks ago. And then he got hurt Saturday, celebrating in the end zone. Had a great first half against UTSA. He's had a heck of a career at Memphis. He's slot. He can catch it and go. He's got toughness. He's got that ability, that dynamic ability with the ball in his hands. So I'm going to go DeMeer Blankumsee. Don't do any celebrations in the end zone anymore, but I'll go DeMeer Blankumsee, 5'10", 188-pounder, 87 catches career-wise, 16-yard average, 12 touchdowns at Memphis after having 57 catches, 4 touchdowns at Toledo last week before the injury, 6 catches, 142 yards, quick slot guy, DeMeer Blankumsee. Like you say, Calvin Austin, I believe, was a 4th-round pick.
That's right. Yeah.
The Ravens, the Ravens had like 5 4th-round picks. Have done really well with those picks, by the way. That Austin was in the mix, but he went to the Steelers. And Steelers now, he helped them win a couple games. So another Memphis Tiger, and this is going to be the theme. Toledo, Memphis, kind of is the theme of my deal today. So I'll go with DeMeer Blankumsee. Field, where are you going?
Yeah, Mel loves his Tuesday night Maxen. I just respect that beyond measure here. Who's the toughest, most competitive wide receiver in the draft, Mel? I think I got my answer. I think it's Xavier Restrepo from Miami, who, by the way, now has the most receiving yards in the history of University of Miami football. Just a couple of decent wide receivers, Andre Johnson, Michael Irvin, Santana Moss, like amongst the many great receivers that have come out of that program, none have more receiving yards than Xavier Restrepo. Not a big guy. I don't have him, 5'10", maybe. I don't know what he is. Fastest guy? Probably not. This guy is unbelievably tough and unbelievably clutch. This year they've been the cardiac canes this year, right? Miami, they begin every game down 14-0 somehow. Not literally. It just feels that way because every game they play is high stakes and high drama. And Xavier Restrepo is out there putting his body on the line every single week. Cam Ward can be off by half a yard, throwing the ball behind Restrepo, throwing the ball above his head, throwing it at his feet. He finds the way to come down with the football. Incredibly, incredibly tough. Excellent over the slot. Very good after the catch as well. Lays it out there on the line every single week. I'm having a hard time pinpointing exactly where, frankly, a lot of players will be drafted right now because it's still so early in the process. We're nearly 6 months away from the NFL draft still. But Restrepo is one of those guys that I know by the time that we get to the draft, no matter how high he goes, and I don't think it's going to be in the first couple of rounds, to be clear. But if he goes late third, somewhere in the fourth, I'm just saying to myself, bravo to whoever takes this player. He's tough, he's clutch, just defines the kind of guy that has been a winning football player at the college level that I think has a lot of translatable traits to the NFL level as well.
Freddie Biletnikoff, remember to stick him, Greeny and Field? Remember to stick him? I don't stick him anymore, but you would think Restrepo has stick him all over him because the ball just
catches
goes.
Everything.
It just is amazing. The ball finds Restrepo. He finds the ball. Now, he's a heck of a football player, and Cam Ward loves having him. Greeny, I'm big into names, and I love a receiver named Roc. You give me a Roc, and he's a power forward. I had DeMeer Blankumsee as the 5'10", 188-pounder, and I got his teammate Roc Taylor at 6'3", 215 pounds, a big body, power forward mentality. I like a couple weeks ago, touchdown reception, wins the game for Memphis. Last week, he had 8 catches, 111 yards. He had a ton of big catches for Memphis. So again, I like Roc Taylor, 4th round area, a big receiver at 6'3", 215. I think at that point in time, he would make a lot of sense. Like I talked about all those Memphis Tiger players that made it in the NFL are playing right now in the National Football League. These 2 kids will play. And Roc Taylor, for a guy with that kind of size, physicality, and normally really good hands, he had that uncharacteristic drop a couple weeks ago. And he made up for it, came right back and made up for it. Like the kid, like the competitiveness, like the production.
I tell you what, we do, there's a scouting term, Grady. It's very scientific. It's called "This Kid Looks Good on the Hoof." It's a reference to a player who just looks like he is rocked up in just a natural athlete. That's Savion Williams from TCU, who I could call him a wide receiver, but he's becoming kind of a joker as over the past few games, TCU, who's been sputtering offensively this year. They've obviously had a lot of talent leave since they played in the national title game 2 seasons ago. They've started to rely on Savion Williams as a wildcat quarterback. He's running the football a ton. He's like 6'4", 220 pounds, and can really run. A couple of games ago against Texas Tech, he has a carry in the first quarter on a direct snap as the wildcat quarterback, in which he puts on a spin move for the ages and runs for like a 40-yard touchdown. Then a little bit later on in the game, he catches a ball. He's wide open in the middle of the field, sort of on a seam route. And that part was not spectacular, but the open field speed, he looked like he got on a horse and just cruised his way down the field into the end zone for like a 75-yard touchdown catch. This guy is an impressive athlete. Now, the big question I have on Savion Williams, is he a guy that straddles between wide receiver and running back? Is he a pure wide receiver? I don't think he's a pure running back. And those players can be really tantalizing when you're watching them on tape. Think about Ainias Smith last year, ended up being a 4th round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles out of Texas A&M. It was like, this guy's just good with the football in his hands, but he was getting a lot of manufactured touches. These guys can sometimes be a little bit trickier to consistently do the same thing with at the NFL level. But Savion Williams has been coming on like a freight train of late. This wide receiver class is not as good as last year's in terms of the very top of the heap, but does have good depth. And Savion Williams, I think, has made himself some money over the past few games by taking on this sort of joker role for this TCU offense that desperately needed it.
Yeah, I hate comps, Greeny, but that Cordero Patterson
That's
comp
the one
is
now,
out there.
right?
So it's out there. This kid, I thought last year there were some drops here and there, some concentration things, consistency. And he said, is he going to be Brashad Perriman, who I thought coming out
that's a good one,
didn't
too.
get it done because he wasn't consistent, has that kind of frame as well. But this kid is a freak, and he's become much more consistent, reliable, the versatility, that dual threat he is, like you say, with the Wildcat. I think he could be a 2nd-round pick come late April. Savion Williams is going to go pretty high in the draft.
All right, so we've had nothing but wide
that's a spicy
receiver.
take right there.
We're just one wide receiver after another. Let's change it up. Mel, I need a linebacker. Give me a linebacker.
Hey, I said back in April of this past year that Ohio State's winning a national title this year. And I didn't feel too good at the early part of the year. Oregon game. I even said a couple weeks ago after that, I said, I overrate it. These guys are a bunch of names. They're a bunch of names. They're not playing to the level of their name and their talent. And now they're starting to step it up just a bit. They got the win over Penn State. Still made a lot of mistakes, but they got the win. The glue, the guy that, and I go to Jack Sawyer, Tio Malolow, Tyleik Williams, Hamilton, the corners who were taught some, even this past week. Igbinosa got the interception, would say they, but he's a little handsy. Penalties, got Ransom, you got Hancock, you got all these guys. Caleb Downs, by the way, is not draft eligible, the great sophomore safety. All these other guys are, and they were a bunch of names until now they're stepping up. The one guy that didn't have the name Didn't have the recognition. Nobody was talking about him because all these other guys were overshadowing him, but he's been the glue. He's been the leader, is Cody Simon. Cody Simon, off-ball linebacker, 6'2", 235 pounds. Last 3 games, Penn State game, led him with 10 tackles. He's all over the field. I mean, he's timing out the blitz. He's doing things, getting after the quarterback in that game. Nebraska game, 8 tackles, 3 tackles behind the line of scrimmage. Oregon game, 10 tackles. He's going to have started over and played in. He's going to have played in over 50 games when his career ends. That's rare. Again, you're talking about a guy who is the leader. He's the consistent guy. He sets everything up. He's going to come into the NFL day 3, a little bit underrated. I love the production. I love the consistency this year. And I love the fact that he's that leader. And like I say, he's smart and he's the glue. And he's the one no name that, in my opinion, has become a big name. And they knew who he was. What numbers he on that block O, the Ohio State. You see that with Cody Simon for a reason. They love this kid.
Yeah, that Ohio State defense really met the challenge this past week against Penn State, right? Those two teams were allergic to the red zone. It felt like what a weird game that was for them. I'll wrap things up here with yet another South Carolina defensive lineman. We've talked about a couple others on the show previously, but how about Tonka Hemingway? How do you block this guy, Mel? Now, I'll say this. Let me start by saying this. The ecosystem, I'm referring to it as the ecosystem that this South Carolina defensive line plays in, is very strong for these guys. It is conducive to all of them looking good because you simply can't pay all your attention to one of them. There might be 5 NFL bodies on this defensive line right now. So it's not like any of these guys are going to be getting double or triple teamed consistently right now. They're all rushing basically one-on-one matchups. But Tonka Hemingway, if you're looking for a guy that's going to impact the passing game as a defensive tackle and interior rusher, here's your guy, Tonka Hemingway, amongst the names that you should know for the upcoming NFL draft. This guy's been unblockable of recently. I feel like every game I'm sitting there just watching him, just bulldozing opposing interior offensive linemen. I mentioned on a recent show how, some of the beauty of having an interior pass rusher is that it's the fastest line to the quarterback, right? You don't have to get around the edge there. You just got to get through the guy in front of you. And Tonka Hemingway, not the biggest guy, listed at 288 pounds. I buy that. That seems about where he is. Quick, explosive, plays with good leverage, gets underneath opposing interior offensive linemen, strong hands, a hard guy to block in passing situations. The fact that he's not going to be this dominant force against the run probably puts a cap on how high he goes in the draft, but a fun player amongst a ridiculously talented South Carolina defensive line.
It is. Love Shane Beamer. Loved his dad, Frank Beamer, and that defense, TJ Sanders. You can't be stay at him. You got to be disruptive and get in the backfield, your right field. He does that. You got Stewart on the edge. You got Kennard on the edge. Yeah. You got O'Donnell Fortune making plays at corner. You got Eamon Wari, the safety, all over the field.
Yeah.
That's an NFL caliber defense in terms of guys going to be moving on and making money in the National Football League. So you're right. Hemingway's got that ability to get into that backfield and be disruptive.
All right, let's wrap it up with our Orange Crushers. That is a tradition unlike any other on this First Draft podcast. No one knows more about Orange Crushes than our friend Mel Kiper. This is an under-the-radar player. Who's our Orange Crush of the week? Mel.
I'm going to the Toledo Rockets. I'm going to a team that sent guys to the National Football League. Quinion Mitchell, he was in that secondary with Quinion Mitchell last year, and he was a guy, again, you talk about the glue. I mentioned that with Cody Simon. Maxen Hook. Is that not a great safety in the National Football League? Maxen Hook, safety with Toledo Rockets. This kid, last 5 games, 10 tackles, 13, 15, and 9. Yeah. This year, 9 or more tackles in 6 games against Mississippi State early in the year. Mid-September, he had, 12 tackles in that game. He's got 5 years. That Cody Simon's going to start, going to play in 50-plus games at Ohio State. Maxen Hook's been at Toledo for 5 years now. He's got 331 career tackles, 6 interceptions, super smart, tremendous leader, highly respected by his teammates, the coaching staff, everybody at Toledo. 5'11", 205-pounder, super instinctive. When you get into the day 3 of the draft, that's where Maxen Hook will make an awful lot of sense. I think he starts in an NFL secondary. Just watch this kid. He jumps out at you. And he did it last year. He did it this year. He's done it his entire career. Maxen Hook should be in the Big Ten. Fortunately for Toledo, he's been in the Mid-American Conference with this program. It's had a lot of guys move on. Kareem Hunt, Deontay Johnson's now here in Baltimore. You go back, I mentioned Jerwan Newton last week. Maxen Hook is my Orange Crusher of the week.
Let me ask you a question. Are you the director of football ops or the offensive coordinator for Toledo? It's all the only thing we talk about now on this program.
I'm a Mac attack. Well, I love the Mid-American Conference. Curtis Rourke was at Ohio. Now he's at Indiana, right? They even take guys from the Mid-American Conference and they move on. But a lot of these guys, and give them credit, Field and Greeny, they didn't move on. Okay, Quinion Mitchell didn't leave Toledo. Maxen Hook didn't leave Toledo. Okay, Jerron Newton. These guys, they're staying and they're doing the things. A lot of other guys in that conference are going to be playing in the National Football League. Curtis Rourke did. It's been a great opportunity. Indiana is rolling out down 10-0. They put 47 unanswered on Michigan State. I can't wait till they play that Michigan defense. I can't wait till they play that Ohio State defense. I want to see what Curtis Rourke's made of to see if he belongs in that top 5, top 6 of quarterbacks in this draft field.
He's been excellent this season. All right, big. I'll save one of my guys for next week, but I'll start here. We've had a lot of discussion.
Grapefruit crush or a pineapple crush, Field?
It's a pineapple crush. Come on, you know, Mel. My dad's from Hawaii. We crush pineapples. That's what we do. So we've talked about how the transfer portal and just guys moving left and right can have some negative impacts. There could also be some really good stories. And one of those is Joe Royer, who's now with Cincinnati after 3 seasons at Ohio State. This guy was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, a Cincinnati kid who had all the accolades. Goes to Ohio State and in 3 seasons has 4 catches. 4 catches in 3 seasons for a big-time recruit. He goes to Cincinnati in his first year. He's already got 36 catches, 438 yards, 3 touchdowns. He is already within striking distance. I think it's 9 more catches to be specific of, you guys may not have heard of this guy, Travis Kelce, for the most catches by a tight end in Cincinnati program history in a single season. He's been incredible. I don't know if the guy's coming out or not this year, but Joe Royer, let me tell you something. This guy, good looking athlete right here. Silky smooth, catches everything. Literally, he catches everything. He has not had a drop this season for that Cincinnati offense. Can do some stuff after the catch as well. Big body in the middle of the field. Good enough as a run blocker as well. This tight end class, and we're going to talk about in a future show, deep spots and not so deep spots. It's a good-looking tight end class. Joe Royer, though, needs to be mentioned more than he has.
Yeah, 22 of them. 22 tight ends, H-backs have a chance to play in the National Football League. And 42 running backs, 2 right now have a shot. Now, some of these guys won't be. They're draft eligible. They may go back. But I'm the 42 running backs. I'm the 22, 23 H-back tight ends. Joe Royer right now is 9 overall on my tight end board. That includes, and then you have the H-back board. But no, Joe Royer has certainly helped himself with the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Well, you mentioned Travis Kelce. A lot of people certainly went as him and Taylor Swift for Halloween. And we will finish it up this week with one that you really need to be checking us out on the on ESPN's the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel in order to see it. But we asked Field to supply a photo of his family trick-or-treating last week, and it did not disappoint.
There we go. It'll be in post.
There it is.
Yeah.
Mel, the 4 of them, they look like 4 cows as they are dressed up for his daughter's favorite milk.
Unbelievable. That's the top of the board.
So good.
That's the top of the board.
I'm with you. A good take by you to wrap up the show here, Mel. We had a great time. Let me tell you what. These kids, Halloween has moved up to #1 holiday in the Yates household. That's that right there. That's going to be a hard one to move off of. That is, wow, Travis Hunter of holidays, because my daughters were like, wait, so... And this was the first year that it really resonated with my older daughter, and my younger, who's not even a year and a half, just follows her older sister because that's what they do at this age, right? She admires her. She is her hero. They loved it. She's like, so I get to go to this house and get candy, and then the next house and get more candy, and then the next house and get more candy after that. What a great idea. Whoever created Halloween all those years ago, my hat goes off to you. And the cows, totally played. My older daughter has still been wearing her Halloween costume nearly a week later. She loves it. She wants to sleep in it every night.
Mel, here's the question. Having gone through this experience as you have as well, your daughter is grown up now. Both my daughter and my son are grown up now. There are 2 kinds of dads, is my experience, during the trick-or-treating. There's the one dad who's right in there with all the kids, ringing the doorbell with them, all excited. Not when they're as little as your kids, Field. But when they're, 7, 8 years old and they're able to do this by themselves. There's the dad who's right up in there ringing the doorbell. And then there's the dad who's walking like 8, 9 steps behind the whole group holding a red Solo cup. And I think we all know the red Solo cup is the universal sign for I needed something to drink in order to get me through this experience. Which of those two trick-or-treating dads was Mel Kiper?
I was the Orange Crush and the Red Solo Cup.
There you go. There we go.
I was way back there, guys. I was not nowhere to be found, nowhere to be seen. I was there, but I wasn't visible. Okay, put it that way. I was in my own little world. Yeah.
Actually, Field, it would be fun to be Mel on Halloween because so many people probably trick or treat as Mel.
Yes, I know.
If Mel rang your doorbell, your incliniation might be to say, "Well, that's
the worst nightmare."
Get the hair, get the hair up. That would
get the hell out of here.
Yeah, it's
all right.
Yeah,
well
great,
done.
great
Happy
costume. That's
Halloween,
next year,
everybody. We bear down on Thanksgiving. We'll see what winds up happening there. That's it for this episode of First Draft. Don't forget you can like and subscribe to the podcast and tune in every Thursday during the season for full NFL draft analysis, and keep those tweets coming using the hashtag First Draft. And as you heard today and every day, we always answer
by the way,
questions.
not to interrupt, Greeny.
Yeah.
We're changing the name to Too High Safety Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still comes up. Still
Too
comes
High
up.
Safety Podcast. If we're all
right,
aboard, I got to do it. My guys in New York, hey, DiPietro and Rothenberg said, David and Rick said, go strong with Too High Safety Podcast.
All right, we'll have to look into that.
We're going to have to check. I got to bring it because if I didn't bring it today, say I was soft and I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So I was coached up to say it's got to be the Too High Safety Podcast.
Right, we'll check into whether there's a trademark issue on that, and if it's okay, then we'll go with it. For the moment, please like and subscribe to the First Draft podcast. And with that, he is Mel, he is Field, I am Greeny. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.